Groovy.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Jim here today with some import Dreamcast recommendations. The Dreamcast actually one of my favorite systems to collect for. Lots and lots of awesome shooters and fighting games and arcade ports. It's absolutely outstanding, and there are a number of really good games for it that were released only in Japan. So we're going to take a look at a few of them today. First up, this is a game in a classic puzzle series by Sega, also kind of part of one of Sega's classic strategy RPG series as well. This is Sakura Wars Columns 2. And this is a game that crosses over Columns, which is Sega's classic puzzle game series, with Sakura Wars, which is their series that crosses over visual novels and strategy RPGs, and it's a sequel to the original Sakura Wars Columns, which was released on the Sega Saturn. And essentially this game is just Columns with a very nice Sakura Wars paint job, but there are a number of different gameplay modes to choose from to keep things nice and diverse. There is a story mode, which is pretty cool. It incorporates the visual novel segments from a Sakura Wars game, so you interact with other characters and you respond to their questions and to certain situations, and depending on how well or poorly you do when you play against them in a game of Columns, they'll perform either better or worse. So it's kind of like the RPGs, where the better you interact with other characters, the stronger they'll be in combat. It's sort of that same gameplay mechanic going on. There's also versus mode, and there's an endless mode, which is like playing a traditional game of Columns. So there are a handful of gameplay modes to keep you occupied. So this is a very enjoyable puzzle game. Dreamcast actually has a handful of really good puzzle games, and this is definitely one of them. Also, like I said, Sakura Wars paint job. It's a very nice, colorful game. The soundtrack is also very good, and this is also a very affordable game. If you look on eBay, copies of this go for, I think at max, like $10. So if you want a good puzzle game to play for your Dreamcast, if you're a fan of the Sakura Wars series, I'd say this would be a good, fun, very affordable pickup. Sakura Wars Columns 2, excellent little puzzle game, great for fans of either Sakura Wars or Columns or puzzle games in general. It's a lot of fun. Next up, kind of a quirky game, a sequel to a game that was also Japan exclusive. So this is a Sega series that has remained entirely in Japan. This is Rent-A-Hero number 1. And this is the sequel to the Sega Mega Drive original, and it's a very literal title, as you play as a guy who orders a superhero costume in the mail just to be worn at a party, and he is sent an actual superhero costume that endows him with superpowers. So he decides to parlay that into a little money-making venture. So you go around town advertising your services to people and taking on missions. You'll do a number of different things, but for the most part, this game is a 3D beat-em-up, as the original was more or less a 2D beat-em-up style game. So as the Rent-A-Hero, you run around, accept missions from people, you go and beat up a bunch of bad guys, and then you collect your payment, and then you upgrade your suit in various ways, and then so on and so forth. So it's like, I don't know, business simulator beat 'em up action RPG type game, I guess is the best way to describe it. Again, a very unique, kind of quirky game in Sega's history. Really too bad it didn't get released in the States, because it is very fun. Graphics are also good, if fairly dated by today's standards. The soundtrack is also good, and it's just a premise that's too weird to pass up. So this is one I would definitely recommend for Sega fans who have not experienced Rent-A-Hero yet. Pretty cool game. Also, not terribly expensive online. I'd say the max amount you'd be expected to pay for a copy used would be somewhere in the range of $30, but you'll probably be paying less than that, maybe no more than 20, and I'd say it's definitely worth that for this very unique Dreamcast experience. I would recommend picking this one up for Sega fans. Rent-A-Hero #1, very cool game, highly recommended for Sega fans that are looking for something a little out of the ordinary. This would be a good choice. Next up, great game in a favorite fighting series of mine, very cool. This is Vampire Chronicle. And this is a personal favorite fighting series of mine, and it's really surprising to me that it didn't get released outside of Japan, because there were a ton of Capcom fighting games released for the Dreamcast internationally, but they didn't show Darkstalkers any love. This game was eventually ported to the PSP in all regions as Darkstalkers Chronicle, the Chaos Tower, I do believe. Essentially what it is Darkstalkers 3, but you can choose any number of different gameplay styles from the first 3 games. So if you prefer the combo system or the super combo meter from the first or second or third game, you can choose whichever one you want. Other than that, you have the full roster of characters, beautiful graphics, amazing sound design. Again, essentially Darkstalkers 3 with a whole bunch of extra options. I absolutely love this game, and if you enjoy the Darkstalkers series in general, then this is one I would recommend picking up and playing if you don't already have the PSP version. If you enjoy playing your fighting games on the Dreamcast, which I know a lot of people do, this is definitely a game worth picking up. It is becoming a little bit more expensive these days, unfortunately. Looking on eBay, copies tend to go from between $40 and $60, which is kind of steep. But if you're a big fan of this series, and again, if you like playing your 2D fighters on the Dreamcast, because Sega hardware is always really good for 2D fighting games, arcade ports in general, then I would recommend picking this game up. It's absolutely outstanding. Vampire Chronicle, definitely worth picking up if you own a Dreamcast and you like Darkstalkers or Capcom fighters in general. This is an excellent game. Next up, one of my absolute favorite shooters on the Dreamcast, maybe my favorite shooter on the Dreamcast. This is excellent. Zero Gunnar 2. And first and foremost, it has to be said that this is a Psikyo shooter, and I absolutely adore their entire catalog of shooters, everything from Gunbird and Sengoku Blade to the Strikers series. Everything they made was pure gold in my opinion, and this game is no different. It gives you 3 different helicopters to choose from, and what's really cool about this game and what sets it apart from their other shooters and from other top-down shooters in general really is that you can move in a full 360 degrees, so enemies will come at you from all different sides of the screen, so your attention is everywhere all at once, not just stuff coming from in front of you or from behind you, but it's coming from all around you. The bosses will move all around the screen, and you have to follow them and keep up with them, so that's very cool. Each helicopter plays differently, has different shot types and power-ups and super bombs, which is pretty typical for Psikyo. They always give you at least a handful of ships in each one of their shooters to add a little bit of variety to the game. So the gameplay here is absolutely outstanding and again unique amongst shoot-em-ups. The graphics are also really good. The soundtrack is outstanding. Again, typical Psikyo quality. It's absolutely amazing. Again, this might be my favorite shoot-em-up on the Dreamcast. I highly recommend playing this one for shooter fans. The only downfall is that, as far as I know, the Dreamcast, as of right now on consoles, is the only way to play this game. No digital re-releases or anything like that, which is a bummer, because this game has become pretty expensive in recent years. If you go online, you're looking at least a $200 purchase, which is very steep. Some might say downright unreasonable, but for what might be the best shooter experience on the Dreamcast, a console that has a ton of great shooters already, it just might be worth it. Zero Gunnar 2, absolutely amazing shooter. Highly recommend picking up and playing this one if you can. It's outstanding. And last but not least, I could not do an import Dreamcast video without mentioning this game. It's really something special. This is Sega Gaga. And this might be the most unique experience on the Dreamcast, on any Sega console, in fact. You play as a new employee of Sega, which is struggling to hold its place in the video game market. They're being demolished by sort of an evil overlord corporation that is kind of meant to represent Sony stealing up all the market share for video game sales. So you go into Sega as a new employee, you're charged with getting Sega cranking out awesome new games again so that they can take back some of the market share of the video games and become their good old dominant video game creating cells. So it's, for the most part, a dungeon crawling RPG, but the dungeons are different development studios at the Sega headquarters. So you go in and fight all kinds of crazy characters, and you defeat some really insane bosses in order to get these development studios back up and running again. And then once you've cleared the dungeon, you can now use that studio to develop games. And then that's when the other portion of the gameplay comes in, where you are developing video games for Sega. So you put together your staff of people that are all enemies you defeated in the dungeon. You put them together. You need a game director, and you need designers, and you need programmers. You build your team up, and you get them working, and you use different items and different abilities to basically keep them motivated and keep them on task, so they'll churn out good games. And every time you do this, you get more of the market share back for Sega, and the goal is to eventually make Sega the dominant video game company. So overall, the gameplay experience in Sega Gaga is very unique, unorthodox, kind of weird, but it's a great game for Sega fans. Tons and tons of references and characters and just really, really weird Sega shit. I absolutely love that kind of thing. So definitely for Sega fans, this game is a love letter. It's well worth playing. Unfortunately, this is another one that's getting pretty expensive these days. Just for the standard jewel case copy, you're looking at $60 to $100, and much more for the special edition that has all kinds of extras and stuff in it. But if you're a Sega fan, then this is definitely a game you're going to want to at least give a try. I would recommend picking it up for the diehard fans. It's really awesome. Sega Gaga, absolutely awesome game. Definitely worth a try if you're a longtime Sega fan. This is really something special. And that's it. 5 Japan-exclusive Dreamcast games that I would recommend importing and playing. Thanks for watching, and let me know down in the comments what some of your favorite Dreamcast games are, some of your favorite imports, or some import Dreamcast games that you'd like to get your hands on. I'd like to know. Maybe I could cover them in a future video. And until next time, thanks for watching, everybody. Take care. Goodbye.